This story is about Jim Teal, and it's a dandy. I think you'll like it a lot. But first, let's think back to our first two stories. What word means to be humble and not a show-off? It sounds like the name of our friend Hugh. Now, think of a word that means to turn from doing wrong and start doing right. It sounds like the name of our buddy Rippy. What is the word? Our third story begins in the kitchen where Jim Teal, a moray eel, is talking with his Aunt Lucille.
Aunt Lucille, I sure am glad that you and Uncle Maury took me in. I like living here a lot more than those foster homes, but you seem real sad sometimes. Have I done something wrong?
Oh, gracious, no, Jim. It's just that your Uncle Maury is drinking a lot, especially when he's with Grandpa Murray. They get so loud, like right now. They're in there watching that Super Fishbowl game on television. Every critter in the cove can hear them. At first, they're kind of funny, but it doesn't take long until the two become rude and crude, and mean. And then they always cause a scene. Too many suds will do that to Maury.
Jim had heard stories about his uncle. A moray eel looks ferocious with its big mouth and sharp teeth. Uncle Maury liked to hide behind rocks and scare the slime out of other sea creatures, like he did when he overheard Samuel Salmon say,
"Lurking in holes and jumping out, scaring people to death. Nobody likes that."
When Maury heard that, he rearranged Sam's mouth. It took an oral sturgeon to straighten his teeth. Fish, like people, usually do what's expected of them. Expect their best, and you'll get their best. Expect the worst, and that's usually what you'll get. That's the way it was with Uncle Maury. People expected him to act the way he looked, to live up to his reputation as a bad dude fish. So he did. Maury Teal was one mean moray eel. So mean, in fact, that Aunt Lucille Teal had to put Maury out of the house.
Jim, I'm sorry that Uncle Maury's not around to help you anymore, but his drinking has just made life too hard. I asked him to get a room at the Coral Cave Inn.
I understand, Aunt Lucille. I'm sorry for you, too. Uncle Maury was just too mean. One day, I heard him call Harry Hake a blankety-blank and Big Mac mackerel a so-and-so for no reason. Then he proceeded to whoop their tails. It was awful. Did he hit you, too?
Sometimes,
said Aunt Lucille.
So he had to go.
In some ways, life was easier without Uncle Maury in the house, but it was harder, too. After all, a young eel needs an older eel to teach him how to grow up to become a good eel. Jim was having a tough time without someone to show him the right way. His Aunt Lucille was worried about him.
Jim, I'm concerned about you,
she said one day.
You seem to be having trouble at school and with friends. And last week, I overheard a sand shark tell Barracuda to stay out of your way. He said you're one bad fish, and that you like feeling rough and tough and angry. Jim, is that true? What's happening? Is there anything I can do to help?
Nah, I'm okay. Bad means good, and I'm good in bad.
Jim was becoming too much like his Uncle Maury. Aunt Lucille could see it. She decided to call Principal Pipefish and get the scoop on the real eel. The principal had plenty to say, none of it good.
Last Tuesday, Barney Blowfish was casually cruising down the hall when Jim jumped out of the doorway and scared the air right out of him. Barney looked like somebody had turned a balloon loose. Whew! What a racket it made when he flew into Davy Jones' locker. On Wednesday, Jim mashed Margaret Mussell's mustard on Paul Pike's pizza and Betty Bumfish's biscuits during lunch. Mustard squirted everywhere and all over everyone. Jim laughed while the girls cried. Paul Pike didn't want to get punched, so he plugged his puckered pout and kept quiet. Poor Tilly Tushfish. At recess, during a game of Tootsie Toss, Jim Teal turned traitor to his team and intentionally tossed his Tootsie at Tilly. It stuck on her tushy as she turned tail and took off. How embarrassing for Tilly. That happened on Thursday.
I'm worried about Jim.
said Aunt Lucille.
He's becoming a mean moray eel.
Aunt Lucille knew she needed help with Jim, so she called Maury's brother, Ernie Eel. Ernie was electric. Nobody messed with him. His jolt was no joke, but he wasn't mean like Maury and Jim. Ernie was a genuinely gentle electric eel. He had his strength and power under control, and Aunt Lucille knew it.
Uncle Ernie, I'm having trouble with Jim. He needs a good eel in his life. Would you help?
I'd love to, Lucille. I'll take him to the aquarium tomorrow. We'll look at the people and have a chat. Hey, Jim, what do you think of the humans?
Ernie asked his nephew.
Colorful and weird. Mostly weird. What do you think, Uncle Ernie?
I think all this people watching has made me hungry. How about some crab corn or a shrimp sickle? I'll have a squid squirt sundae. And while we're eating, let's take a break and talk.
Sure, Uncle Ernie. Fire away.
Let me ask you, Jim. Did you like the way Uncle Maury acted when he drank too much?
No way. He was rude and crude and loud and mean, and he always caused a scene.
Jim shuddered at the memory of his uncle's drinking.
Then why do you want to be like him?
Uncle Ernie asked.
What do you mean? I don't drink. I never touch the stuff.
I know, but you've developed quite a reputation for being rude and crude and loud and mean, and you love to cause a scene. I heard about what happened at school. Why did you do it?
I don't know. I guess I need to live up to my reputation. People expect me to be mean. Besides, I kind of like it when the other fish are afraid of me. It means they've got respect for this fish.
Do you think I'm mean?
Ernie asked with a spark in his eye.
Well, no.
Do you know any fish with more power than I have?
Ernie's gills crackled.
No.
Said Jim, awestruck.
Then why do you suppose I'm not mean?
Only a fool would mess with an electric eel.
Do you think fish respect me even though I don't terrorize them?
Sure.
Jim said, looking around.
I can see it in their eyes and on their faces.
Why do you suppose they aren't afraid of me, even though I could hurt them if I wanted?
Uncle Ernie, I don't know. What are you trying to tell me?
Just this. People may fear you, but that doesn't mean they respect you. You can't demand respect, Jim. You earn respect by being kind. Fish who try to demand respect are weak and have holes in their character. They may look strong, but it's what's inside that counts, especially to the fish maker. On the inside, bullies and meanies are really weenies and wimps.
That was hard for Jim to hear. He knew he had been acting like a bully, and he knew Uncle Ernie loved him. But his feelings were hurt. Jim Teal hung his head as they swam. Uncle Ernie finally broke the silence.
I'll bet that crab corn made you thirsty. How about a soda?
Sure. Thanks.
After a sip or two, Jim felt a little better. Still, he couldn't stop thinking about what Uncle Ernie had said. They swam some more and ended up in a bed of dandyworms. Jim perked up.
I have a blast playing with
He
dandyworms.
said with cruel glee.
It's fun to blow them off their stems and watch them scatter. Uncle Ernie, look how all the little worms go when I blow on them. Hey, how come none of the worms fell off when you touched them?
Jim, come over here and take a close look. But be very careful this time.
Wow, all those dandyworms have little faces, and they're smiling. How come they're doing that?
They aren't afraid.
Said Uncle Ernie.
They trust me.
But when the dandyworms saw Jim, their smiles turned to looks of terror and they screamed.
Help us, Ernie!
They're not afraid of you, Uncle Ernie, but when they see me, they freak out. Why?
You know the answer, Jim.
Yeah, I guess I do. It's because I'm mean to them.
Why don't you tell them you're sorry and begin to earn their respect?
How will I know when I've got it?
When they trust you, then you'll know they respect you.
Jim reached out and touched the stem of the dandyworm. He used his gentlest touch, but 2 worms fell off anyhow. Jim carefully picked them up and put them back on.
I'm sorry,
He said sincerely. Then he smiled at the dandyworms, but none smiled back. Jim kept coming back day after day, smiling and waiting for the dandyworms to decide to trust him. One day, after a few weeks, they smiled back. Jim had earned their respect. It was a great day for Jim Teal. Jim remembered what it was like when the dandyworms were frightened of him. Then he thought of the looks on the faces of the fish he had bullied at school. He thought, if I can win over the dandyworms, I can earn the respect of the fish at school too. Maybe we could even become friends. Jim had learned that saying,
I'm sorry,
was a good start. But he also learned that it takes time to earn trust and respect. So Jim went back to school and began to make things right with all the fish he had been mean to. He started by saying,
I'm sorry,
to Barney, Margaret, Betty, Paul, and Tilly. Then he started working to earn their trust. It took quite a while, but that's the way it is with inside hurts. Inside hurts take a long time to heal. Jim did the best he could to fix the wrong things he had done. He did what Rippy Tance would have done. From that day on, Jim Teal showed everyone how much better it is to be kind than to be mean. He showed his good character by taking the time to earn the trust of others. And in the end, he got the respect he had always wanted, thanks to the influence of an eel with character like Uncle Ernie. The fishmaker was pleased. Fish University took notice of the changes in Jim Teal, the moray eel. Since he had brought his strength and power under control, the university decided to name a word after him and put it in the dictionary. Do you know the word that was named after Jim Teal? Sure. Gentle. A Jim Teal word. One more thing. Fish University also began giving an annual Uncle Ernie Award to a fish who helped bad dude fish be cool. Gentleness does not mean being a coward, a weakling, or a wimp. Moray eels are none of those things. But like a trained killer whale at SeaWorld, Jim Teal brought his strength and power under control. That is being gentle. When was the last time you were mean or hurt people? Are you mean more than you are gentle? Do you know a godly person of good character who could be an Uncle Ernie for you? What was the word that was named after Jim Teal? Now, take the time to talk to God about any meanness in you that He would like removed. Then ask Him to show you ways to be more gentle. Have a nice visit with God.